So good morning, everyone. Today is April 11th, and I just want to address right off the bat that, of course, I'm new to these Facebook Live updates. The reason that the shot is backwards is because I've got the iPad facing towards me, and in the future I'll try to fix that. I know people were concerned about the iPad being the wrong way and things being backwards in the picture, but anyway, that is why. So first and foremost, I just want to say thank you so much for your attention to everything that we have been working on in order to address stabilizing the industry, stabilizing our jobs and our paychecks. So I want to go back. In past crises, workers have had to pay for the crisis. And we know this very well. We know this from 9/11, and not only the hurt of losing our friends, but then the financial hurt that followed. And it was used during that time by investment bankers who used those bankruptcies and restructuring to change our contracts. They had the power of the bankruptcy court to do that, to abrogate the contracts. I had a front row seat, of course, for the 38-month-long United Airlines bankruptcy, and also 20 other bankruptcies that we were either directly involved in at AFA or involved tangentially. So I know exactly what happens, and what happens is that the bankruptcy court and the executives and actually the lenders in those bankruptcy conditions have all the controls, and they are able to, well, at one hand force concessions on workers, on the other hand they're able to award executives extraordinary bonuses. The lenders who are predatory lenders who look for these opportunities go to the top of repayment in the bankruptcy process, and the workers are last. And so there are people who build their entire business around doing this, hoping that companies will go into bankruptcy because there's a lot of money to be made. And let me give you an example of that. During the United Airlines bankruptcy alone, there were hundreds of millions of dollars in bonuses. And we fought all those, and we actually capped them. And if you can believe it, kept them in check. They wanted to have unlimited amounts. And because we fought, we were able to cap them. But even so, it was still hundreds of millions of dollars that went out to these people. And the attorneys who were working for that bankruptcy billed $25 million for their lunches alone. Okay, we lost our pensions, took 30 and 40% cuts in pay, changed our work rules, increased our productivity. We lost jobs. We absolutely lost jobs during that time, and they rewarded themselves. So I know what happens, and I also know that it was because of all of you. I don't know if, many of you were not around during that crisis, were not around during those days of the bankruptcy, but those of you who were, almost every single one of you took part in calling Congress, in writing to Congress, in taking action that your union put together. And we actually did the impossible in an impossible scenario. At the end of that bankruptcy, when they were terminating the pensions, AFA was the union that fought that. We fought it tooth and nail. And because we fought it, we actually got a bipartisan vote in the House. It was led by George Miller and Jan Schakowsky, with the support at the time of the minority leader, newly minority leader, Nancy Pelosi. And it was led in the Republican caucus in the House by Ray LaHood, who then became the Secretary of Transportation under President Obama. But we actually got an overwhelming vote in the House to preserve our pensions, and it was that gave us leverage to be able to force United to give us twice as much as they were willing to pay in a retirement plan. And we fought, that's just one example, but we fought every way that we could with all of the odds against us, with a White House that refused to give United the ATSB loan guarantee and pushed United into bankruptcy, with a House and Senate controlled leadership that didn't want to do anything for workers, and with us in a bankruptcy court where we had to battle it out with the airline and with all of the investment bankers who stood to make a whole lot of money. So this is where I cut my teeth as a union leader. I know it really well. I know what happens in a crisis when we are focused on saving lives, when we're focused on thinking about the people that we lost and the people who are hurting. And there are others who are focused on using this as an opportunity to profit. And so when this started, we were aware as a union that we had to be on top of that. And we had to be out in front, and we had to be suggesting a different path here. And so what we were able to do is to make this not a corporate bailout, but a people's bailout. And the CARES Act includes those $25 billion for the airlines alone in payroll grants that are intended to keep us in our jobs and our paychecks going. Now, Senator Toomey, as you know, I've told you about this before, came in and argued against that and didn't want these payroll grants. And the reason that he didn't want it and Secretary Mnuchin didn't want it is because a crisis is an opportunity for a few people to get rich. And what they wanted was to give money just to the corporations. And we know if that is done without any strings attached, it doesn't get down to the workers. It doesn't. And so here we are in the middle of this crisis. We needed to keep our industry and our jobs intact, our paychecks intact. And so we fought that really hard. And I am just going to tell you that there were many progressive friends who didn't understand this either because they didn't want to do a corporate bailout. What we put together was not a corporate bailout. It was the first time in history ever that we put together a relief package that was focused on workers. And so a lot of people couldn't even understand that. They couldn't even wrap their heads around it. But you know who understood it? Was Speaker Pelosi. And I'm just going to tell you this. You need to know that she was our strong champion on this. If it was not for Chairman DeFazio and Speaker Pelosi leading the way and forcing a vote in the Senate that pushed down Mitch McConnell's plan, which was only focused at going to the corporations. The money was going to go to the corporations, and the corporations could decide how to spend it. And because they came in and were very strong with the Senate Democrats and forced that negotiations and pushed for these payroll grants for us, they made it possible for us to get that into the bill. And what was added at the last minute was this option of the Treasury Secretary to be able to put financial instruments on those grants. Now, I want to be really clear. A grant is a grant. If you put any financial instrument on it, it's no longer a grant. So this is not consistent with the law and is not consistent with the bipartisan agreement. And as long as I am talking about our key champions here, Speaker Pelosi and Chairman DeFazio, let me also recognize that behind the scenes, Chairman Wicker in the Republican caucus in the Senate was also fighting for these grants. And that has not been public, but I want you to know this is not about political parties. This is not. Let's be very clear. This is about us and about workers. And we are going to find friends wherever they exist. But I'm telling you that Secretary Mnuchin is not our friend. And he invited these investment bankers from New York to run this process and to try to take this money out of our hide. So what happened yesterday is they announced, because they don't know anything about the airline industry, and we did a really good job of putting pressure on them, they announced that 30% of the payroll grants to certain airlines over grants of $100 million. So there are some regionals who are going to be protected at 100% here. But there are other regionals like the wholly owns at the mainline carriers who are not going to be protected because they don't understand the airline industry. And there are the larger regionals who are not going to be protected in this process. So for anyone over $100 million in payroll grants to keep people in their jobs and their paychecks going, Mnuchin has said that 30% of that has to be paid back in a loan. So what that means is $7 billion of the $25 billion that was allocated to go directly to us, Mnuchin is saying he is going to steal from us. The U.S. Treasury belongs to the public. It does not belong to the Treasury Secretary. It doesn't belong to the White House. It belongs to the American public. And this law said that this money was going to be allocated to us. So what this means is that if this sticks and the airlines have to pay back that money, they are going to keep everyone on the job through September 30th, but they're not going to have what is needed. And they are going to, that is going to fall on us then. That is going to fall on us to deal with that $7 billion shortfall in the fall with jobs. And they will come, some of them may have to file for bankruptcy, let's hope not. But they will come for concessions. And so that is what's going on. I want to be really clear. We still achieved something historic here. Okay, we have these payroll grants, and this requires them to keep us on the job, no involuntary furloughs through September 30th, and that is extraordinary. And we have pushed this farther than we ever have before. So I want you to take that in. We have done something that is extraordinary here. But Secretary Mnuchin, with his investment banker friends, have tried to destroy that so that they can keep the mindset of the American public that we should be lucky to have a job in the fall. On the other side of this crisis, that we're not going to fight back. I want anyone who's listening right now who is not in the aviation industry and is in another industry, another sector, to understand that we're fighting for this priority in this bill because we believe it should be applied to every other sector, that people should be called back to work, connected to their paychecks, because we need to create, as you may have seen many economists talking about, a V-shaped economy here, where we're bringing all the businesses closed and the work down so that we can get rid of the virus and then be able to shoot off again in our economy because people stay in their jobs, stay connected to their paychecks. And for flight attendants, just to put it in very simple terms, we need other people around the country to continue their paychecks because we need people to be able to buy tickets on the other side of this crisis. It's that simple. And that relates to anything else. Other people need us to be able to go to their restaurants. We have achieved something historic with these payroll grants. Mnuchin has said that any carrier who has a payroll over $100 million is going to have to pay back 30% of those payroll grants. That turns grants into a loan. That is directly in conflict with what the CARES Act said, which was that there was going to be $25 billion in payroll grants that are designated only to pay workers' salaries and keep us on the job. And there would be $25 billion available in loans to the airlines in order to get loans if they need it for the continued operations. So he has taken $7 billion from us in doing this. And it absolutely conflicts with the law. The airlines have put out a statement this morning that says that this is not what was intended in the law. The law was passed with a bipartisan agreement, and it was very clear that this was intended for us, to get help to us, and to keep us out of the unemployment lines. So this is also a template that Speaker Pelosi would like to use for every other industry. And I want to thank the Speaker, and I want to thank Chairman DeFazio for his work on this. I also want to thank Sam Graves and Ted Cruz, who have spoken up for this. I spoke to Ted Cruz yesterday, and Josh Hawley in the Senate is talking about this idea. And the Progressive Caucus now is talking about this idea because of what we have put forward. So we have the ability to fight for the money that is supposed to come to us. And we will continue to be very much on the record that Secretary Mnuchin's efforts here with his investment bankers who know nothing about the airline industry, $100 million is an arbitrary number. It doesn't relate to anything. I want to be very clear about the airlines who will be affected by this. So United, American, Delta, Southwest, Spirit, Frontier, the wholly owns of American and of Delta, Alaska, Hawaiian, and possibly also some additional regional airlines that whose payroll is above that number for the period of time that's being covered here. So these are investment bankers who know nothing about the airline industry, don't care about the airline industry, but stand to make a lot of money if the airline industry goes into bankruptcy. A lot of money. And we are going to say that this is wrong. This is not what the bill intended. This is not what the bipartisan agreement was. And it is also not what the president promised. And so we need to make it very clear to the president about what Secretary Mnuchin has done, because yesterday the president said he wasn't going to meet with the airlines, was not going to discuss this. And it seems that he doesn't understand what has happened here, because what he has been saying in the press conferences is that the money would be directed to the workers. And what Secretary Mnuchin just did yesterday was steal $7 billion from us. So, you know, there's still a glimmer of hope here, frankly, that we can get him to back off. We need to be very clear, very loud. We do need all of our members of Congress speaking up about the bipartisan agreement in the CARES Act. So I would encourage you to call your member of Congress and ask them to weigh in here and keep this a workers' first package. But we also just need to be really clear and on the record, even if this does stay in place, that this was wrong and this is not what was intended, because we are going to have a lot to do over the next several months in dealing with the fallout of this crisis for the entire country. And there may be other opportunities to fix this going forward, even if we don't fully fix this right now. The good news is that the payroll grants will go out to our airlines. We will keep our jobs in place. We need to make sure, though, that we are also strong for the fall, that we are not seeing additional layoffs in the fall because of this, that we are not seeing bankruptcies in the fall because of this. And we have said from the beginning that this time workers are not going to pay for it. We are essential workers right now, and we are fighting for hazard pay and as essential workers. And it is high time that essential workers in this country, grocery store workers, our medical professionals on the front line, truck drivers, are the people who deliver our mail. Let's be really clear. The U.S. Postal Service is providing a lifeline to people in their homes right now. And those workers on the front lines have been doing their jobs faithfully every single day since this started. And they are on a knife's edge here too. So our government has not made sure that the post office is secured and will stay in place. And we all need that to happen. But all of these workers who are typically not recognized for the work that they do every day are now essential to this country and to our lives and to our ability to operate. And we are going to continue to push workers first. We are going to continue to lift up the dignity of work. And we are going to continue to demand that bailouts are people bailouts. And they come to us first. They do not go to the corporations so that they can decide how to spend them. They come to workers on the front lines and the people who are hurting and the people who are keeping our country going, even in the middle of this crisis. So thank you all so much. Please stay tuned. Continue to spread the word and know that this is about flight attendants. This is about us. And let me be very clear. I am so lucky to be the president of our flight attendant union, and there is no place that I would rather be. Flight attendants have the spirit that sustains me, and flight attendants are the reason that I'm in this fight. You're amazing. You have lifted me up so many times in my career, and I just want to lift you up and all of us now and let you know that I'm going nowhere. I'm sticking with you. And we're in this together, and we're going to make sure that this time this isn't put on our backs. So that's it for today. We'll get back with you soon. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. And thank you for being in this fight. We can make it better for everybody together. Thanks.